Free will is a great gift from God, and it's an essential concept for understanding how the world works within a Christian perspective. First, what is free will? This concept refers to the idea that God has granted human beings the power to make their own ethical decisions, good or evil, right or wrong, virtue or wickedness. In the end, it's up to each one of us to decide which path we shall pursue as we go about our daily lives. No force compels us to do evil beyond our own choices. This freedom of choice pertains to our social interactions with people we meet throughout the day. But we should not reduce ethical behavior to only what happens between us and other people. Our power of exercising free will in pursuit of virtue or of sin does not end here. We must also exercise free will prudently in the personal choices we make within the context of our own private lives. In this regard, ancient Christian texts, especially monastic literature composed by isolated monks living alone in the desert, far from contact with other humans, remind us that proper moral behavior entails not only treating the people we meet each day with love and charity in our public social interactions with them, it also entails cultivating sanctity and holiness when we find ourselves all alone during those silent hours when it seems that no one is watching. Moreover, it is not only our external, visible actions that matter when we exercise free will. There is much more to it than this, for the Christian ethical code is one with towering demands, even if we might not always manage to meet them in practice. Important, too, are the interior dispositions of our heart with which we perform actions. That is to say, a Christian should strive to exercise free will virtuously, not only by doing the right things, but also by doing them in the right spirit, controlling not only the external things people see, but also maintaining a pure interior disposition within. As is recorded in the Sayings of the Desert Fathers, an ancient collection of wise anecdotes attributed to holy monks living in the deserts of Egypt that dates to the 400s AD. One disciplined old monk offered this advice: observe your thoughts and beware of what you have in your heart and your spirit. In order to better understand the Christian concept of free will, it's important to paint a portrait of a world in which free will does not exist. Typically, doctrines that espouse such a position are referred to as determinism or fatalism. In these conceptual systems, humans have no power over the ethical choices they make because all events are predetermined. Every act a person performs is simply an inevitable, automatic response to what came before it. Just another step in a long chain reaction of equally inevitable, equally automatic responses. Think about determinism and fatalism as an ethical landscape that operates in the same way as a chemical reaction. This, for example, was precisely how the Manichaeans, a group of ancient deterministic heretics who denied the reality of free will, conceived the idea. In a chemical reaction, substances interact with each other in a predictable way, to the extent that we know what the inevitable outcome will be once we compute relevant variables like mass, volume, and temperature. This is because once the substances in a chemical reaction begin to interact with each other, a chain reaction ensues that ends in a scientifically predictable outcome. For example, when you combine baking soda and vinegar, everyone knows what will happen. When the two substances meet, they will froth, bubble, and foam. This outcome is inevitable based on the laws of nature and the physical properties of each substance. The baking soda never exercises any free will to decide that today it will make the choice not to foam when it touches the vinegar. The foaming just happens, naturally. Ethical determinism works the same way, but it applies these concepts to the daily choices of people. Humans have no free will to make autonomous choices based on moral priorities. Instead, they bounce around, interacting with their environments, behaving in ways that are inevitable and unalterable, just as baking soda and vinegar interact in ways that are inevitable and unalterable too. This is not a Christian vision of the universe, for Christians believe in the use of the power of the soul to make real, independent moral choices through free will. Determinism is in fact a very bleak way to conceive of human existence, for it allows no power, no agency, no spiritual autonomy to people. According to this fatalistic worldview, We are all mere droids who have no real ability to change our fates by choosing to improve ourselves for the better. Yet fatalism and determinism are worldviews that thinkers have adopted over the course of history, and many church scholars were themselves deeply concerned with refuting intellectual opponents who thought this way. Among the fathers of the church, the two major theorists of free will are Origen of Alexandria and Augustine of Hippo. First, let's consider Origen. Origen is famous as an ancient Christian thinker who emphasized the radical autonomy of the human will. To him, generally speaking, people have complete and total control over their ethical actions, and the only variable at play in determining how a human chooses to behave is one's own free will. God has given free will to humans, and now it's entirely up to each individual to choose what they'll do. Be it virtuous or sinful, the choice is yours. There is much value in Origen's conception of free will. It reminds us that as we go about our daily lives, God permits us to do what we desire. Even if not all things we desire are good, God has left it up to each one of us to choose what we shall do. In this way, God treats human beings like the special, rational, unique creatures that we are. For humans, unlike irrational beasts, do possess the cognitive ability to discern what is right and what is wrong, according to God's commandments. And free will gives us the ability to respond to our intellectual comprehension of right and wrong by pursuing which of the two we so choose. All in all, then, Origen's emphasis on the power of free will reminds us that we must always strive to avoid sin and to pursue virtue according to what God has outlined for us in His commandments. The power to choose is ours. Let's turn to Augustine of Hippo. Augustine's vision of free will is a bit more complex than Origen's. This is because in Augustine's conceptualization of free will, instead of only one variable at play in ensuring proper moral conduct, free will alone, now there are two variables, free will and God's grace. For Augustine, grace means divine aid that God supplies to humans so that they can perform righteous actions. Yet, if for Origen, free will is the key thing that causes a creature to behave virtuously, for Augustine, the key variable is no longer free will, but grace. Augustine envisions that free will operates alongside grace, responding to it once it is given. But, in the end, it is grace that is the essential factor, the real force behind all virtuous actions. This means that when a human being performs a good deed or makes a righteous decision, it is not the person's free will that, at the root of it all, is the catalyst responsible for launching the enterprise. Rather, it is the grace of God, a gift which God freely bestows on human beings, not one which humans earn for themselves. Conceptually, Augustine's doctrine admittedly contains a few lurking consequences that raise additional questions. Most notably, Augustine's vision of the relationship between free will and grace begs the question, do humans have authentic free will if, in the end, virtuous behavior ultimately is dependent not on their own powers of decision-making, as Origen says, but instead on God's grace? In the end, however, Augustine has a powerful, holy vision, for he recognized that even if humans have free will, in the end, each one of us still needs God. We are dependent on God to do good, because all good things ultimately emanate from the universe's one supreme good, the almighty, benevolent Lord who created us and who loves us, and who mercifully bestows on us the aid we need to grow in love and devotion toward Him. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and share, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos.